Good evening and welcome to the June 7, 2021 Menlo Park Planning Commission meeting. We start with our call to order. This evening, I see we have Commissioner Barnes, Commissioner DeCarlo, Commissioner Doran. I don't see you on screen. There you are. And Commissioner Harris.
Hi.
Welcome.
Thank you.
And Commissioner Kennedy, Commissioner Tate, and I am your chair for another hour or so, Henry Riggs. So we start with reports and announcements, and I'll ask Ms. Sandemeyer, do we have any reports relevant to the meeting tonight?
Good evening, Chair Riggs and Commissioners. So tomorrow night, the City Council will be meeting and they will hold a public hearing on the proposed budget for year 2021-22, the fiscal year, and the capital improvement plan. And they will provide direction on the budget that will scheduled to be adopted on June 22nd. That concludes my updates, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. And we will, of course, be looking at the budget in terms of the capital improvement projects conformity this evening, but not the content of the budget. Our next item up is public comment. Under this public comment, the public may address the commission on any subject not listed on the agenda and items listed under consent calendar, which this evening would be the minutes from May 10 of our meeting on that date. Each speaker may address the commission once under public comment for a limit of 3 minutes. Excuse me. Please clearly state your name and address or political jurisdiction in which you live. The commission cannot act on items not listed on the agenda, and therefore the commission cannot respond to non-agenda items brought up under public comment other than to provide general information. So to comment this evening on items that are not on the agenda, you would look to your Zoom control panel and look for the hand icon. Click on that icon and that will alert staff that you would like to speak. And that is an immediate connection. If you happen to be attending by phone this webinar, you can hit *9 on the phone and that will similarly indicate to staff that you would like to be connected. So we'll give it a few seconds here to see if anyone responds in either way to indicate that they would like to speak.
If I may, Chair Riggs, we do have a comment that came through.
Wonderful. Please introduce.
Okay, so at this time, I will go ahead and introduce Pam Jones. Again, you do have 3 minutes. Let's see. Okay, Pam, you should have the ability to activate your microphone.
Hello, I unmuted myself and I hope my audio sounds good. Good evening and thank you all for the work that you do. I appreciate the comments that you make that help me to better understand how housing is determined in Menlo Park and how you are in some cases forced to apply things to the current zoning. I've also heard some comments that that it may to the tune of it may be that it's unrealistic for children that grow up here to believe that they can then buy a house here. And to me, that sounded like the being perfectly okay with excluding people because we keep moving our house prices up by the houses that we allow to be built and by maintaining the job housing imbalance. And we know the job housing imbalance is the biggest thing. So what I would ask of you is to, from a philosophical basis, to encourage that you in fact support housing at all levels throughout Menlo Park, and that Menlo Park is in fact a welcoming community. Thank you. And thank you all for the work that you do. I know your packets are just really, really extensive. So thank you again.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. Do we have any other speakers, Mr. Tafi?
At this time, Chair Riggs, I'm not seeing any additional speakers.
All right. With that, giving the passage of 3 minutes and some, I think we can go ahead and close public comment. Move on to our next item, which is the consent calendar. There's one item on the consent calendar, and that is the approval of the Planning Commission meeting minutes from May 10 of this year. And do I have a motion to approve the minutes? Mr. DeCardi?
Yeah, I move to approve as submitted. Thank you.
All right, thank you. And do I have a second? Mr. Doran?
I'll second that.
All right, so we have a motion on the floor to approve the consent calendar. Unless there are any comments, I will call for the vote alphabetically, starting with Mr. Barnes. We're voting on the consent calendar. Aye or nay? Mr. Barnes, is your audio on? I have an aye. Mr. DeCardi
Yes.
and Mr. Doran
Yes.
and Ms. Harris.
Oh, I have to abstain.
Correct. And Ms. Kennedy? Ms. Tate?
Abstain.
And I vote in the affirmative. So the motion passes 5-2 with Harris and Kennedy abstaining due to absence. That concludes our consent calendar.
Harrison Tate. Harrison Tate abstained.
I'm sorry, what on earth did I say besides Harris and Tate?
Harrison Kennedy.
Oh, thank you. So moving on to our public hearing, we have one public hearing item tonight. This is a use permit and architectural control application by the O'Connor Tract Cooperative Water Company, address 211 Oak Court. This is a request for a use permit and architectural control to add a new manganese treatment system to an existing public facility water treatment system located in the R1U, that's single family urban residential zoning district. The new system would include a 20,000 gallon raw water, raw water blending tank, a 10,000 gallon backwash storage tank, a multimedia fluoride, filter system, a 192 square foot equipment and controls building and associated equipment. The existing diesel generator is also proposed to be replaced, and sodium hypochlorite would be used for the water treatment, both of which require use permit review for the use and storage of hazardous materials. The application also includes a use permit request to exceed noise ordinance noise levels along the right property line for monthly testing of the generator. Mr. Pruder, are you representing this application?
Good evening, Chair Riggs, Planning Commissioners, and members of the public. Yes, that is correct. I am this evening the planner. Good evening. There are no announcements from the staff side, but I am available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Do we have any initial questions from commissioners for staff? All right, seeing none, may I invite the applicant to describe the scope of work?
Yes, good evening, commissioners. My name is Peter Haas. I am the project engineer and engineer of record for O'Connor Track Cooperative Water Company. Let me, sorry, the slides are out of order, so let me see if I can drive. Okay. Are you able to see them?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. Let me put it in slide mode. So we appreciate that we are finally here presenting our project. This is a project that I've been involved in with the water company for close to 10 years. I'll get into our slide. I have a small slideshow this evening, about 5 or 6 slides, to introduce you to the water company and to the project. This is a site location map. You know, we're in the heart of Menlo Park. This is on the left-hand side. This is an old reservoir. The site also houses, there are 2 supply wells on the property. There's a 100,000 gallon storage tank. This is a water company it was established in 1921. So this is not a new use on the site. This is a cooperative water company. It is a nonprofit organization. The water company serves 343 connections in the general vicinity of where the water company is situated, which is right in here, this large parcel. And they serve over 3,000 residents, both in Menlo Park and Palo Alto. They also, you know, they, as a water company, they also support fire service as well in this neighborhood. The water system, as I mentioned, has 2 deep water supply wells on their lot. That is their source of drinking water and fire water. And then they also have a 100,000 gallon elevated water tank, and then they have a booster pump system to maintain pressure throughout the neighborhood. The groundwater in this part of the peninsula has naturally occurring elevated levels of manganese. Manganese is not at the concentrations in the wells, does not pose a public health threat. However, it is a nuisance condition. So water users will experience staining of fixtures. And that's the primary problem with manganese. The water company, we've been working as their engineer as well as with the water company for 10 years, working with the State Water Board to come up with a corrective action plan. Part of the time involved also afforded the company to complete studies and secure financing for this project, which they have done. And this project is being required of the water company. This is not an elective project. They're under quite a bit of pressure. They're under enforcement orders to put the treatment system in. So time is of the essence. The treatment system that we're proposing to put in is considered conventional treatment, meaning that it has been used widely throughout, really throughout the world. We're treating manganese, so we can use simple, we use a liquid-based chlorine solution to oxidize the manganese and then run it through media filters to pull out the manganese. Once it's oxidized, it turns into a flock. To minimize water losses, we're allowed to recycle the backwash water that we do once a day through the treatment system. So we won't be wasting water. The system will also include new telemetry, which will allow the operators to be able to monitor the system remotely, which they're unable to do now. So it'll allow them to be more responsive. And then we're putting in a brand new generator, which will have state-of-the-art air quality control mechanisms, as well as sound attenuation Part of the issue right now is the placement of the, I mean, we've tried to optimize the best location for the generator, and we're still getting a little bit of sound on the property line, but it's just within a fraction of exceeding the sound limits. So like I said, the project history, we got started in 2012, so almost 10 years. Through that period, the water companies completed a number of technical studies as well as pilot testing to determine the efficacy of the treatment plant. Over the last 2 years, David Jones and the Water Board have been able to secure financing for the project, and they've been given permit approvals from the State Division of Drinking Water for the treatment system. And at this point, they have an engineering contractor under contract to put the system in. So the only step right now, really preventing the water company from moving forward with this project, is securing an updated use permit from the city of Menlo Park. The major components, this is a site plan in the blue. Behind us, we have a couple of water tanks that will be on concrete pads. We have a new filtration skid being manufactured out of Anaheim. And then we do have a generator over here. And then we also have a new equipment building. You know, that's a fairly low profile building. That's all I have this evening. David and I are both available to answer any questions if you have any.
Mr. Haas, I do have a couple of initial questions. One, just to confirm, the site plan you were showing would have Oak Court on the left. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes, Oak Court is over here on the left. You're right. This is the entrance to the site. Yes.
I think on some of the plans we were reviewing this week, the plan was reversed. So I just wanted to orient us. And then just out of curiosity, I am guessing by the shape of the property, that is the grades indicated on the property, that this is a concrete paved area that used to be a shallow reservoir. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yeah.
Does that amount to how the containment is resolved for spills of hazardous materials?
No, we would have secondary containment. We have small lots, meaning, you know, we'll have 55 gallon barrels of hypochlorous, and they will be on in secondary containment vessels.
All right, very good. All right, I'm sure there could be some other questions. So why don't we initially seek questions from fellow commissioners at this time, if we have advanced questions, and then I'll go to public comment. Do any of my fellow commissioners have questions at this time? All right, seeing none, let's go to our public comment period. So this is the point at which the public can weigh in or ask questions, make comments on this project. And the way you do that is, if you're attending by Zoom, you would click on the hand icon that is on the Zoom control panel. Alternatively, if you happen to be attending by telephone, you would key *9, and that would similarly give us a real-time indication that you would like to speak on this subject. We ask that you hold your comments to 3 minutes or less, and of course that they be relevant to this project. Please state your name and the jurisdiction in which you live when you are connected. And Mr. Tapia, do we have anyone who would like to comment tonight?
Looks like we have 2 comments at this time. I will go ahead and introduce them as they So commenter, John, please introduce your first and last name and your political jurisdiction. And then you have the ability, John, to now activate your microphone.
And, Mr. Tapia, just to let you know, your audio is breaking up a bit tonight.
Hello, thank you for your efforts. You supply a wonderful supply of clean, drinkable water. I support this project. That is all I have to say.
All right, thank you, sir. Much appreciated, concise commentary, and much appreciated that a water system that is seems to be run quite effectively financially is appreciated. Mr. Tapia, do we have another commenter?
Yeah. I will go ahead and introduce the next speaker. I guess something I'm not getting through. Hopefully.
Would you say the name again?
Pedros.
Hi, I'm Ana Pedros. Can you guys hear me?
We can hear you, yes. Can you hear us all right?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Great. My name is Ana Pedros. I'm a resident in Oak Court and just wanted to let you know that the neighbors in the community really support this project. We have been supporting it for a few years right now, and we are very excited that this is so close to hopefully being approved. So that's it, full support.
All right, thank you so much. All right, and Mr. Tapia, do we have any other public comment?
Hopefully.
All right, and I hope we can square away Mr. Tapia's audio as the night goes on. All right, bringing this back to the commission, do we have any questions or comments? Yes, Mr. DeCardi.
Thank you, Chair Riggs. Mr. Haas and the team, thank you for all the effort to put this together. 10 years is a long time to be committed to something. So appreciate you being at this moment. I just have three quick things. The first is, have you reached out and heard back from the direct neighbors, especially the neighbor that would be most immediately impacted by the noise concern, and what was the feedback?
No, I'll let David speak to that because he's in the neighbors.
Yes, hi, this is David Jones. The direct neighbor is aware of the project. We have Manny, if you're online, if you could go off mute. I don't believe we've managed to speak to them about that yet. It's half a decibel above the 60 decibel limit. And Manny, I don't know if you've had a chance or know if we've talked to or Rich has talked to the neighbor about that.
This is Manny Nathanson. We haven't really discussed the noise levels. We have had feedback in the past from the current generator that the noise levels were bothersome to that neighbor. With the new generator and moving it over about 30 feet, we would expect the noise levels to be much more acceptable to that neighbor than they were in the past. The current generator is many decades old, so one would expect the noise characteristics of the new generator to be much better than the old generator.
Great, thank you. My second of three pieces is just the profile of the new construction. And I believe in our packet, it's listed as D8, and it looks to be sort of a David Hockney-esque composite of pictures. And I just wanted to confirm that that was the best visual essentially, and that the renderings that are in black would be the new construction. So from my visual, it appears it's lower profile than the existing tank, for example. Am I interpreting that the right way?
Yeah, in terms of it, that everything's, we're in a reservoir, so everything is below grade, and the new treatment works is quite a bit lower than the elevated tank for sure.
Great, fabulous. Thank you. And then the last thing is I just want to thank you, and I want to thank Mr. Pruder for an awful lot of back and forth. This will surprise nobody on this commission about my distaste for diesel generators. But I am satisfied that you explored that deeply, including with residents in the community who are trying to find solutions, and that unfortunately this is the most cost-effective and best solution right now. And over the years of running the generator, if you can, they develop synthetic alternative fuels that are better, would encourage you to explore those. But I am satisfied that in this case, the diesel generator unfortunately makes the most sense. And again, my thanks for the back and forth and Mr. Pruder for facilitating that. You did an excellent job today. And that's it for my comments and questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Ducardi. Any other commissioners with comments? Yes, Ms. Kennedy. Oh, no, all right, sorry. All right, I have some follow-up questions. In part, just because I see that the reservoir was constructed as much with berming up at the perimeter as excavating down in the lower portion. Just to confirm, the new 10,000 gallon tank is actually shorter than the $20,000 tank, not too surprising. But the 20,000 gallon tank is 20 feet high and the existing tank is 28 feet high. Seems like it's a matter of proximity. Do we, and I apologize if I missed an image, the 20,000 gallon tank, how was that finished? Is that galvanized metal?
No, I think we're intending, I think it's a polyethylene tank is my recollection right now.
And is it any particular?
Or I think we're probably a dark green.
All right. Thank you. And then the noise issues, although I think the generator has probably captured our interest, as we have over, well, the 15 years or so that I've been on the commission. We've addressed generator noise multiple times. But it appears that the pumps that run the system, they exceed 60 decibels as well. I'm looking at page 11 on the Rincon report. Can you clarify what is the normal operational noise peak? Is that correctly indicated in the Rincon report?
I don't know, Manny, did you want to speak to that? Yeah, you know, I'm sorry, Mr. Riggs. Yeah, I don't, those pumps are enclosed, so I think I don't think we have the sound issues. I'd have to go back and review the Rincon report. I apologize.
This is, I think there were some noise measurements made very close to a vent to the pumps. That's like a foot away from a vent, but and it's a small vent. But as soon as you get away from that, the noise levels from the current pumps is very low. We have never had any complaints about the pumps that are in the pump house. We enclose things to contain the noise within the pump house.
Yeah, what I would have to do, I don't think we're getting perceptible noise at the property line for the pumps. So I would have to go back and verify that, but I'm pretty clear. I'm pretty sure that did not come up.
So the existing, and I'm quoting, the existing pump system generates a noise level of 67.2 dBA at 1 foot from the origin. This was converted for purposes of modeling noise levels at adjacent properties. As shown in table 3, existing pump system generates an LW of approximately 69.5 dBA, which is actually a larger number.
Yeah, but I think that's being, yeah, we can clarify with Rincon, but I don't believe that's at the property line. I believe it's right at the building. So.
So they may have misspoke. This paragraph.
Yeah, that may not be properly represented in that. If we need to, we can confirm that. I apologize.
And
If I may, through the chair.
Yes.
Sorry. Yes, thank you, Chair Riggs. I would also like to point to page, that would be E13, the 13th page of this particular attachment. There is a graphic that shows contour lines. And I think that might help in visualizing some of what you're describing here. And I think the 1 foot separation distance of that 60 or so decibel level, I think that's also indicated in this graphic. I'm just trying to check.
E13? Okay.
Yes, because that's showing the location of the equipment and controls building. There's a figure 4. And it appears the contour lines are emanating from that equipment and controls building location.
Yes, I do see that. And it appears to generate 50 decibels out to the property line.
Yes, that's correct.
All right, and these pumps are running as needed, which is potentially day and night. Is that correct?
They, yes, yeah, I mean, they do run, on demand. Manny can probably speak to the scheduling of those, but yes.
All right, so were you able to clarify which noise it was that the neighbor on the right had long-term concerns about?
This is Manny from the generator.
Yeah, our highest concern is really with the generator.
All right, so he tolerates the 50 decibels coming on at night.
Doesn't even know it's there because it's below the berm. And so the sound doesn't get out.
Oh, I see. So the 50 decibels, while it's taken at the property line, I just had that page up. That is, well, that can't be below the berm because the berm is on the property, isn't it? And it returns to natural grade outside.
Right.
Yeah, so at least according to this map, it makes 50 decibels out to the property line. The bright yellow line. And the key number 9, which I don't know what that refers to, but I can look it up. Well, I can't look it up.
If I may, through the chair.
Yes, sir.
Yes, thank you, Chair Riggs. On the next page is a table that indicates, I think those are address. There's another page, I'm sorry, I'm just looking for the, I thought that there was some assortment of monitoring locations, and I believe that's what these numbers are referring to.
Right, so item 9 would be the location in question indicating 46.7 decibels, which I guess is approximately 50, and that was the purpose
yes,
of the yellow line.
It
And
might be
I apologize.
E17, Commissioner.
So,
Chair Riggs.
so there's a couple things that would be good to clarify. So reading the impacts. So they feel like right now that the exceedances of the generator are on the front property line, which is adjacent to the roadway. So it's not shared with the property. So that's beneficial. It's a good thing, right?
Right, yes.
And then,
Disregarding the
yeah.
plan we were just looking at, yes.
Yeah. And then,
All right, and then let's move to the Kohler generator then.
so just, I guess on the conclusion of the report, they say that, hourly noise levels generated by the proposed project would not exceed the city's daytime and nighttime standards during regular operation. So I guess what we're seeing is that we do exceed it by a half a decibel at one property, and it's only occurring when the generator is being tested. So it's
Right, so let's talk about the generator for a moment. So we have that the neighbor was concerned about generator noise, but we don't have a measurement of that noise. So we don't know whether the new generator is quieter or the same or less quiet than the current generator. I appreciate the optimism that a newer unit would be more quiet, but in other systems, I have found that that is not necessarily true due to cost savings and who knows what other reasons. Perhaps even that systems, for example, a system that I put in at a hospital some years ago, it was assumed that it would go into an acoustic enclosure, and therefore the modular unit had only a certain level of acoustical abatement.
So the numbers that they're using are based on not on the existing generator, but on the proposed generator.
Right, so I'm just
for the modeling, yeah.
Right, so I'm just noting that we can't compare the neighbor's concern with of the existing generator with the noise of the new one, because we don't have apples to apples. We don't have data on the old generator, I'm sure. And it doesn't appear that measurements were taken of the current generator in testing mode. Am I right?
I'm trying to figure that out. I apologize. Yeah, it does not. It looks like they did the modeling based. No, we actually did some. Let me go to an older report which we had done with the existing. So we did do a memo. Actually, they did do a generator at the source. And the dBs were ranging. They were close to 95. I can share this data with Matt. But they actually had done some measurements.
That's at source?
In 2019.
It was 95 at the source?
Yes. Ranging between 95 and 96.
That is barely with a muffler on it. That is loud. Good Lord, that is 3 times the effectively of the 60 daytime limit. And the Kohler generator, I'm just looking. I have sound pressure at 23 feet. Do we have, for comparison, sound pressure at the source?
It looks like it's like 80, ranging between depends on how much it's running, right? So at 63 hertz, it's at 86, and then at 8 hertz, it's down at 75. So it kind of varies.
All right, well, it does sound like it's going to be less, so that is a positive. I don't think it's appropriate to press you for a sound enclosure, absent more specific request from the neighbor. So that's all the questions that I would have. If no one else has a question, I think we could look to the, by the way, did I properly close the public hearing? Yeah, I think I did. So at this point, I'd like to see if anyone would like to make a motion to either approve or deny the 211 Oak Court O'Connor Tract Cooperative Water Company application.
Chair Riggs,
Yes.
I'd like to move that we approve the application as submitted.
Thank you. And it's my fault. I had moved the screen slightly aside, and that's the reason I couldn't see you. So we have a motion on the table to approve from Vice Chair Doran. Do we have a second? Thank you, Ms. Kennedy. So we have a motion and a second. Pending any other comments or questions, I'll call for the vote, starting with Mr. Barnes. It's an aye. And Mr. DeCarty.
Yes.
And Mr. Doran, as the maker, is an aye. Ms. Harris.
Yes.
And Ms. Kennedy.
Yes.
And Ms. Tate.
Yes.
All right, and I am a yes. Always good to see something move forward, and I'm pleased to say you have unanimous approval for your project after a mere 10 years of trying to move it forward. Congratulations.
Thank you all.
Yeah,
I know the
thank you very
community
much.
appreciates this. Thank you.
All right, that closes our public hearing of the evening, and we move on to regular business. We have two items tonight, and the first one is the 2021 to 2022 Menlo Park Capital Improvement Plan. We are reviewing this as the Planning Commission. Our charge is to find whether or not this plan is consistent with the Menlo Park General Plan. And is Mr. Packmeyer or Mr. Lamb here tonight? Oh, Ms.
Yes,
Packmeyer.
and I'm Mrs. Yes, so it's nice to meet you all. So I'm Karen Packmeyer, and I am filling in for Chris Lamb tonight. He's my supervisor. He's our assistant director of public works, and I am a senior civil engineer in the CIP team of the engineering group for the city of Menlo Park. So I'm happy to be here. I'm going to not discuss every single project on the list because all the CIP projects I think you've all seen ahead of time. So my plan was to basically highlight one project from each category from the general plan. So I'm just gonna, like I say, choose one from every category. And if you have any questions at the end, I will be happy to try to answer them. So the first, if you want me to share the screen, which is basically was just going to be Exhibit A of the draft resolution, I can do that, or we can just bring it up now. Otherwise, I'll just basically discuss them. So the first project, which complies with the downtown El Camino Real goal, is the El Camino Real median trees improvement. And that project basically would improve the trees in the median that are along El Camino Real between Encinal and Glenwood Avenues. So I started with the shortest, simplest one. The second goal is the open space goal, and the project that complies with that. I'm going to talk about the park playground equipment. I chose that one just because I am the engineer that worked on the playground at Elon Park. So I was excited when that was all completed. So I'll tell you about that. This project basically, it addresses the playground improvements that are prioritized. And there was a 2015 comprehensive playground safety inspection report done. So aside from just meeting those updated California safety standards, these new playgrounds that are the Elon Park that has been done and 2 other ones coming up, I'll mention in a minute. They're incorporating theme-based educational and interactive components. And that's basically as the budget allows. So like I mentioned, Elon Park was completed in the fiscal year of 2019-2020. It had a bunch of unique features and some features for kids of all abilities and folks of all ages and everything. So it came out great. And then the next 2 projects, which are currently in this fiscal year, which is 2020-2021, the funds are to design Burgess Playground and then also Willow Oaks Parks Playground. And Willow Oaks is going to also, I'm also working on that project. We're going to coordinate other improvements into with the playground. So there'll be a pathway kind of connecting to the community. There's going to be a restroom added and some dog park improvements. So
that restroom has been sought after for, I think, 19 or 20 years.
Yes, I have heard stories from a long time ago. So hopefully we're moving forward on that. And like I say, the idea is that we would just be in the design phase through 2021. And I can answer other questions on that if you have them too. But for now, I will move on. For the third project, which complies with the sustainable services goal, that one is the climate, I'll talk about the climate action plan implementation. So that is basically in 2020, City Council adopted the 2030 climate action plan, which includes a goal to reach community-wide carbon neutrality by 2030. So the purpose of the project is to provide annual funding source to continue the implementation of the climate action plan programs and strategies. This year, funding would be used to explore policy options to both convert 95% of existing buildings to electric by the year 2030, as well as expand electric vehicle charging stations at the existing multifamily properties. Okay, and some work has begun on the electric charging stations as well. Okay, the fourth project I'm going to highlight complies with the safe transportation system goal. This one I'm going to talk about is the sidewalk repair program, fairly straightforward, but basically it's an ongoing project and it removes hazardous sidewalk offsets and it replaces sidewalk sections that were damaged and are being damaged by city tree roots so that it will eliminate tripping hazards. And the project is partially funded by the Landscape Assessment District.
And Ms. Pagmeyer, may I ask, would this include the heavily degraded sidewalks in the Flood Triangle neighborhood?
I believe so. I also on board tonight, I have Nikki Nagaya, who is our director. So I'm going to ask her to join in for a second just to confirm that, just because she's a little bit closer to the details than I am. So Nikki, if you're there, if you can unmute, because I think she's a participant. Thanks.
Welcome, Nikki.
Good evening, Chair Riggs, Commissioners. I apologize in advance. I'm losing my voice and I have a barking dog who's really upset with me right now.
Which is why I was giving the presentation. No, just kidding. That's funny. I just talked to Nikki a few up. Had not lost your voice.
Right. I think it happened after that. I apologize for that. Just really good timing as always with remote meetings. So thank you for the question, Chair Riggs. For the sidewalk repair and replacement program, we do have a large list of backlogged locations. So I think if there's a particular area of the flood neighborhood that you're referencing, we're happy to get that on the list. I don't have the full list in front of me tonight, but we do have the ability to either replace a few blocks of, a few squares of sidewalk at a time, or do kind of minor modifications. So if it's a full block length that is in need of repair, we may need to look at prioritizing that through another mechanism to do a full stretch replacement project.
Yeah, what I recall, and this is from 5 or 6 years ago, was up near Van Buren, there might be 50 or 100 feet on a particular street that it just looked like they had broken, but they had broken so long ago that now there are more dramatic issues of base and so forth. But I was curious, and I apologize for the detour. And I hope your voice gets better, which actually doesn't sound bad tonight, but I'm sure it feels worse than it sounds.
And Chair Riggs, I will note that down, that area too, so that we could look specifically into that area for what the conditions like now and what we could do to fix it.
I'm sure that would be appreciated. It was also one of the areas that tends to flood, at least those winters when we actually get rain.
Okay.
Any other examples of the CIP? Or is that the close of your presentation?
Those are my 4 projects that I was going to highlight, one from each group, but I'd be happy to talk about any other projects on the list. Just because there were so many, I didn't want to bore you the rest of the night.
Well, and we actually have a rather limited scope tonight. We're supposed to find whether capital improvement projects are consistent with the general plan. And while in the past we have delved into individual projects, we're really not being asked to.
Right. And I will mention one thing. I do believe from what I read also, and Chris mentioned that it's only this year's, this fiscal year that you will be voting on that it complies with the general plan. And then we will come back every year in this 5-year CIP plan that I was referring to. So
I was going to ask that you still are keeping the 5-year rolling plan going.
Yes.
That was a great improvement. All right, thank you. Mr. Barnes, did you have a question or comment?
I did, thank you, Mr. Riggs. Question on the plan, the project description, attachment A. And in the past, I had asked for and was curious about, and I think other commissioners had as well, asked for detail as to where in the city the projects happen. And there have been questions about, would it be possible on future updates, and this is going back a couple of years ago, to notate on the projects to the extent possible, because some of them go between districts, but note what district the improvement was taking place in the interest of transparency related to, across the city where the improvement's happening and how's that going. Is that something that we could anticipate seeing in the future, or is that something that for instance, I should stop asking about?
I believe that could be something we could do in the future. It's not necessarily showing districts, but I do know that recently, the last few months, I would say, on the city's website, there's the list of projects where you can look at the overall city map, and you can hover over certain areas and it'll show you what projects are in that vicinity. And then if you click on it, it'll say, here's the details of the project. Here's where it's located, and has a little bit more detail to that. So that is one thing that we've done recently to kind of move in that direction. Like I say, it wasn't necessarily just to show jurisdiction or just districts, but it does give a little bit more ease for folks to find out where projects are currently happening, and also ones that have just been completed. So that's been done.
Thank you for that. I wasn't aware of that, and I do appreciate that. And of course, adding districts to this static copy may not be representative of investment of resources, because one line item can be worth X, whereas the next 4 line items can be worth Y, and they may not add up to 1X. But it certainly is helpful to get an idea of where it's going. So I'll add a plug for, to the extent possible, for next year when this comes back. Certainly that is helpful from my perspective, to be able to just peruse over it and see what's happening where. So I thank you for that.
Sure.
That's it in terms of my comments, and I'll certainly wait to hear other commissioners' comments. But in the meantime, I'll make a motion, put one on the table, that we determine that the 5-year capital improvement plans projects for fiscal year 2021, 2022 are in fact consistent with the general plan attachment A. And I'll make a motion to that effect.
Through the chair, I just want to say, I don't think the public comment was ever opened for this one.
That is correct. We can hold in abeyance any motion, and unless there's a question at this point to get in ahead of public comment, I will call for public comment. All right, seeing none, this is the time where the public may indicate the desire to comment on this particular project. Again, the commission's charge is to determine if the capital improvement program is consistent with the general plan. It is a requirement, an annual requirement of the budget process that I believe is guided by state law. So if you would like to comment on our review regarding the consistency, would you please so indicate by clicking the hand icon on the Zoom control panel, or alternatively, if you are attending by phone, to key in *9. Either one will indicate to staff in real time that you would like to comment.
Good evening, Chair Riggs. Are you able to hear me now?
I am. That's good.
Okay, cool. Thank you. So it looks like we do have one public speaker at this time. So I will go ahead and introduce them. So Pam Jones, you should have the ability to speak now. And again, if you could just please state your first and last name and the political jurisdiction in which you live in.
Yes, thank you. Pamela Jones, resident of Menlo Park, District 1. Thank you. And I first want to thank the planning department for the project, the development project plans page. It is just so easy to find out what major projects are going on throughout the city and where they are in the process. And I really appreciate that. One for the other projects, such as for sidewalks and parks and things, I haven't been able to find it. And if there is one like that, that would be great. And if there isn't, it would be great to have one. The other part of my real comment, was that although I understand, your scope on the budget, the only thing you have to say either is a part of the way that the CIP is written, that it meets that requirement. But I think there's also some other things that would be helpful to make sure that's true. And some of that Commissioner Barnes mentioned, and thank you, Commissioner Barnes. And another part that I thought of when I looked through all of these projects, some of them are paid for by development agreements, so they're not costing the city anything. And it seems to me that that should be separated. Otherwise, it appears as though we're spending a lot of money on things that are not coming out of the general fund, that they're actually coming from development agreements. And that's all I have to say this evening, and thank you very much.
All right, and thank you, Ms. Jones. That is a good clarification. I think that would benefit us as well. I actually had a similar reaction to looking at the 21-22 budget, which incorporates revenues from other sources, which is quite a grab bag to put in along with the revenues that the residents pay for, like taxes and fees. And I have to agree that clarification would be handy. Mr. Tapia, do we have any other comments?
At this time, Chair Riggs, I'm not seeing any additional comments.
All right, well, in that case, I would like to close the public hearing and we'll bring it back up to commissioners. Commissioners and in some cases, commissioner guests. But no waving or I'm likely to call on you. So anyone have a additional comment or question? Mr. DeCardi.
I just wanted to wave, but I do have a question. So I appreciate, Ms. Jones, your contribution this evening multiple times. Thank you for your commitment to the community and for coming to these meetings. It's incredibly powerful to hear from members of our community. And Mr. Barnes, thanks for your original question. It is along those lines. Ms. Packmeyer and Mr. Gaia, thank you on behalf of the city for the preparation and all of this. In the resolution that the draft resolution that we'd be asked to adopt this evening, in the third paragraph, the third whereas, it says that we have determined the current CIP projects correlate with adopted goals of the city's general plan as shown in attached Exhibit A. That makes sense. And then it says, and should be prioritized to address areas of our community disproportionately impacted by the pandemic and the resulting economic dislocations. And my question is, as a planning commission, if we're passing that resolution, to pick up on the suggestion from Mr. Barnes and Ms. Jones, I guess more broadly, by what criteria am I supposed to, as a planning commissioner, apply to that list so that I would know either that they have been sorted, or is there criteria that has been developed that will be applied to do that sorting?
Yes, that is a good question, because I was reading through that same paragraph and it does say that the CIP, how the projects are prioritized. And what the attachment shows is just the list of projects, not necessarily in prioritization order. So I don't know if Nikki wants to come back and try to talk for that one, but we can see if you can answer that one better than potentially I can. Thanks.
Sure. Thank you, Karen. Thank you, Commissioner DeCardi. So I think that particular text was, as I understand it, a request from the Planning Commission to add that language last year and work through project priorities in order to do that prioritization. I'm so sorry that she's normally not this terrible as she is right now when I need to be on camera. So I think in general, last year we were able to focus our resources on projects related to the downtown area. So we used capital funds at the direction of the council in order to install the temporary street closures and work through the improvements to the downtown area to prioritize efforts around the business community that had been impacted. And then we also spent a significant amount of resources being able to prioritize and deliver the city's kind of required milestones for the Menlo Park Community Campus project. So Karen and her team have been working on that in concert with the Facebook team that's leading the architectural work, but there's been a good lift of staff time related to that as well. And then we also completed a sidewalk project on Pierce Road to complete the gaps of the sidewalk that had existed along that corridor to connect to the Ringwood pedestrian and bicycle overcrossing. So I know that's not everything that we would like to see completed in the communities most impacted, but those are a sample of the projects that we had prioritized for delivery over the last year. So I think that the projects going forward, the list of projects for funding, many of them out of the 60 odd projects we have proposed for funding next year, more than half are carryover projects that we'll continue to work on. So we will continue to work, as I said, on the downtown area, the MPCC project, and then anything else that the council adds to the priority list for the year ahead. So there's not a specific set of criteria that we used in relationship to that request from the Planning Commission last year.
Yeah, thank you for that, Ms. Nagai. I really appreciate it. I'll just say I'm a huge fan of that language. I think it's really important to have in there. And I don't think it's necessarily a problem to not have explicit criteria that are by some set of, taxonomy that would deliver somehow fairness in application. I think it's reasonable to interpret it and to know that it is there. I do think it would be valuable to, as we continue to move forward with these projects, to perhaps be a little bit more explicit about who is in the most impacted aspects of our community and the balance, for example, between the business community impacts, which obviously were extensive, as you talked about the extraordinary efforts along our main business district, and residents who have been impacted. And as we know in our community, that those can be almost, in some instances, completely distinct groups of individuals. So I think for me, I'm glad that language was there last year. I'm glad the language is there this year. And I would just commend you all through a really difficult year in dealing with the pandemic for working to apply that on our capital improvement projects. I think the recommendations from Mr. Barnes and Ms. Jones on transparency would be useful, because I think this is kind of a transparency issue, so community members can see what the intent is and then form their own opinions and comment on particular projects. That would be one solution. And I would encourage you to, do some quick after action reviews and think about how you've applied the criteria so you can learn in the future in that mix. But this is all in the context of appreciating the general direction and just encouraging to keep going that way. And thank you very much.
And one thing I will add, because I know Ms. Pam Jones, her first comment, I think it was about the parks and which ones are on the website. And according to the map, the most recently added actually were the 2 playgrounds. So Willow Oaks and Burgess Park are on there, but Nikki Nagaya just forwarded her a message, an email that does have the link, but it's basically under the Public Works. If you do look at current projects, it'll list the capital improvement project map. And then it's by category, environmental, parks and rec and everything. So it should all be there.
All right, thank you very much. And Ms. Tate.
So I'm wondering whether or not it would make sense to just exclude on that third whereas, just because it was, the language was added last year by the Planning Commission's request. And this year we seem to be having trouble with really understanding who was disproportionately impacted because it's not spelled out in the rest of the report the way it's written. So I'm just throwing that out there because, yeah, because it's not clear for us.
Thank you, Ms. Tate. Any other comments on the subject? I have to say I'm inclined to agree with Ms. Tate that in this case, I personally would rather keep it simple. And if our task is to respond to consistency with the general plan, until we have something in front of us where we can connect the dots more directly, that the recommendation that's on the front of the staff report is what I had anticipated acting on tonight. And I don't know about all of my fellow commissioners other than those who have spoken. Someone else to speak? Did I see a hand raised? Yes, Mr. DeCarty.
Yeah, just to be clear, I completely agree with Commissioner Tate's assessment and lack of clarity. But I do believe that it's far better to have it in than to take it out. I think being unclear at least sets a marker for creating greater clarity in the future. And I fear that in these instances, taking it out creates space to go backwards. So I just wanted to say that.
All right, and Mr. Barnes, just for clarity's sake, if you would still like to be the maker of the motion, would you restate and would you clarify whether it's per staff report at the top of the page of our staff report or the expanded version that Mr. DeCarty has read?
Thank you for that, Chair Riggs. Given that I was in effect jumping the shark before the public comment, I'm going to withdraw my motion, and it sounds like there are other opinions about inclusion of language or not. So I'll defer to one of my colleagues to make a motion, and I'll just trail onto that. So there's no standing motion on the table from me.
All right, then at this point, I will call for a motion either to make the recommendation or not make the recommendation per staff report, or to make the expanded recommendation that would include connecting the plan with the impacted areas. So do I have a motion for either one of those? Mr. DeCarty.
Yeah, I guess, Chair Riggs, I'm a little confused on your distinguishing between the two. And I guess this is a question for staff. If we had proceeded with Commissioner Barnes's original motion and we had approved, would we not have approved the language that was in attachment A? Isn't that what we usually do?
Yes, that's correct. So we carried that language forward on the presumption that the Planning Commission would have liked to see it continue to be there, but you could provide direction to amend the resolution and adopt it tonight with that clause of that third whereas stricken from the resolution if you find that more appropriate.
Great. I appreciate that clarification. I'll pause because I believe Commissioner Harris has a question.
Ms. Harris.
Hi, thank you. Thanks so much for this report. I agree with Commissioner DeCarty, and being the newbie here, I'm a little bit confused as to what we're agreeing to if we agree to this with the third whereas in there, because I too am not sure that I understand if we're actually following that based on what we have here. And I'm not sure how we get, I still don't understand how we get to that.
If it helps any, what I was referring to is the 3 lines on the, at the top of the staff report. It is our charge to determine that it is consistent with the general plan, which is then put in parentheses as attachment A. Attachment A, however, is not the general plan. It is the more exact statement. So Mr. DeCarty is right. This is essentially what has been put forward to us. That then includes an Exhibit A to address areas of our community disproportionately impacted by the pandemic and the resulting economic dislocations. Personally, I feel that that is stepping into council's role. We have a representative council and they have their charge to make assessments and to reflect the public, which elected them. But I will understand if a majority of commissioners would like this wording that was suggested last year. So again, I will look for a motion. And if we get a second, then we'll work from there. Mr. DeCarty.
Yeah, I move that we approve it as submitted by staff. And that would, to be explicit, include that existing language.
Okay. And do I have a second? All right, seeing no second, the motion dies for lack of second. Do I have another motion possible? Yes, Ms. Kennedy. Is your audio on or is my screen just off a little bit here?
I had a second. Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. I had a second to Commissioner DeCarty's motion.
Oh, okay. And I consider that a technical problem. And so the motion should have stayed on the table. And we now have a second. Lacking either an amendment or any other motion, let us proceed to vote on the motion that is on the table. So, Mr. Barnes. That's an aye. And Mr. DeCarty is an aye. Mr. Doran.
Aye.
All right, Ms. Harris. It's an aye. Ms. Kennedy is our second. And Ms. Tate.
No.
And I think for the reasons stated, I'll hesitate to approve in this particular format, but obviously I support the moving forward with our CIP. So I will vote against the specific motion. And the motion passes 5-2 with Riggs and Tate opposed. And so congratulations to the city, I guess. Thank you for your presentation and thank you both for answering questions. Not to mention for remembering what we asked for last year, because I didn't. That concludes our item G1 and regular business, and that brings us to our last item of regular business tonight, and that is the selection of the Planning Commission Chair and Vice Chair for June 2021 through April 2022. And Ms. Sandemeyer, do you have any comment to make regarding the process?
Yes, good evening again. So the process normally is to do the chair and vice chair action separately. So the nominations for chair, any discussion and vote would occur. And then the same thing would happen for vice chair. Typically, the previous year vice chair is selected as chair, but any commissioner can be nominated and selected. I think that's about it for the process. But please let me know if you have any questions.
Right, thank you. And I'm sure we've all read the staff report that indicates also it's customary, although not required of us, that the commissioner who has served longest but has not had the opportunity to be chair or vice chair is typically or is frequently the preferred nomination for vice chair. So just that as a more of a historical reference, because it's not a requirement. So at this point, I will open the floor to nominations for chair of the commission for the coming year. Ms. Tate.
I nominate Commissioner Vice Chair Doran.
Mr. Doran, do I have any other nominations or a second for the nomination on the floor? Mr. Doran. All right, we have a motion and second for chair for the coming year of Mr. Doran.
Through the chair, I didn't mention earlier, but the items should be open for public comment in case anyone did want to comment.
Thank you for the reminder, because in spite of having made a note of that, I was going to gloss right over it. So at this point, if anyone is attending who would like to make a comment, once again, the hand icon on the control panel for your Zoom webinar, or if you're attending by phone, key *9. In either case, you will almost immediately advise staff that you would like to speak on the subject. You have 3 minutes to speak, or up to 3 minutes to speak, and please give us your name and the jurisdiction in which you live for history.
Good evening, Chair, Commissioners, members of the public. At this time, I'm not seeing any public comments, but we can give it an extra minute or two if you'd like to see if any come through.
Well, let's give it a few seconds at least. I know Mr. Tapia was nudging me to repeat my comments from last week. All right, so if seeing none for the subject of selection of chair and vice chair, I will close the public comment period and return to the dais, where we do have a motion and a second on the table, having nominated Vice Chair Michael Doran to be our chair for the coming year. And I will call for the vote, starting with Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
And Mr. DeCardi.
Yes.
And Mr. Doran, I think you get to vote.
I'll vote yes.
All right, well, if you vote no, you may be outvoted anyway. Ms. Harris. That's a yes. Ms. Kennedy. A yes. And Ms. Tate.
Yes.
And my vote is in the affirmative. Congratulations or sympathies, Mr. Doran. The vote is unanimous. Welcome to the chair. It will
Thank
feel,
you. I have big shoes to fill.
it will feel just like the same chair. I'm just going to warn you. All right, so that brings us to the opportunity to select a vice chair. Referring to your staff report on page 2, if you so desire, there is a reference to who has served for how long, and whether or not they have served as chair in the past or vice chair. So I would open to nominations. And thank you, Ms. Sandemeyer, for putting that on screen, if that was you. So opening for nominations, and I will note that generally the former chair and vice chair would not be up for nomination for either of those positions at this point. So we're open for nominations for vice chair at this time.
So I nominate DeCarty.
All right, Mr. DeCarty, as we have a nomination on the floor. Do we have a second?
A second.
Ms. Harris, I think I heard your voice before I heard Ms. Kennedy's. Thank you. All right. Any other nominations, or I might as well ask any amendments? That would be creative, I have to say. All right, seeing none, I think we can proceed with a vote one more time. We have Mr. DeCarty for vice chair, although starting with Mr. Barnes.
Yes.
And Mr. DeCarty.
I will vote yes, and also note that I think Commissioners Kennedy and Tate would be exceptional vice chairs as well.
Thank you. I'm inclined to agree. Mr. Doran?
I'm a yes.
And Ms. Harris?
Yes.
And Ms. Kennedy?
Yes.
And Ms. Tate?
Yes.
And I am in the affirmative. So once again, we have a unanimous selection. Congratulations, Mr. DeCarty. It's nice to have unanimous nominations and elections. We should do that more often. All right, and with that as my final act, or my penultimate act, I will ask Ms. Sandemeyer for any informational items that would apply to our commission.
So next meeting will be on June 21st. The Menlo Uptown will be at that meeting for the final entitlements. And then we also have a project with 2 single-family homes on a lot. And that concludes my updates, but I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. DeCarty.
Actually don't have a question as much as I just want to take a moment to thank you, Chair Riggs, for sharing through shelter in place, your comment about the chair feeling like the same chair. And thank you for all the extra effort that it took this year to make it work and to coordinate with staff, and to thank staff as well. It's been an extraordinary year, and you both have worked hard to make this as accessible as possible for members of our public. And I'll note that you worked hard to have our commission meeting before this was happening in many other communities in order to keep projects going forward. So I want to thank you for your service this year, particularly Chair Riggs, and take a moment again to thank staff for their extra effort through this period.
Mr. Barnes.
Yes, thank you, Chair Riggs. 2 thoughts. Thank you, Chair Riggs, whomever sits in that seat. has a really hard job in that they're being, impartial in a sense, more deferring than they would normally, because their job is really to be a good traffic director, and it's a job that I think you did quite well. Thank you for that. A question to staff and Ms. Sandmeyer. I'd like to ask about a specific parcel and project that I had asked about before, and it's specifically the project, the parcel that got approved that is at the corner of Woodland and Middlefield Road. It is the vacant lot next to Willow's Market. I do understand that it is, private property, it's ground lease, so the owners of it may or may not be disclosing what their plans are for it. To the extent there could be a report back on what may be the plans for that parcel and what's going to happen there, it's always been an eyesore and it's continuing to be an eyesore. And to the extent that the Planning Commission can get an update on the project that we approved and what the direction seems to be from the development entity, would be much appreciated.
If I'm thinking of the right parcel, that was the one where was an office building was approved there.
Correct, it's a land lease. Yep.
Yeah, that one, it has expired. It had a use permit that expired. I don't believe we've gotten an update from the developer property owner, but I can verify that and get back to you.
Is that more of an elected discussion, for instance, my particular council member tracking that down, or are you, for instance, a good path to go through to ascertain, what may or may not be happening there?
Yeah, I can definitely check. Tom Smith was the planner working on that, so I can check with him and provide you an update in 2 weeks.
Thank you. I do appreciate that.
Certainly.
Any other comments? Oh, Mr. Dorn.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo Commissioner McCarty's comments on your service as chair. In addition to being always impartial and well-informed and erudite on the issues, I think you conducted these meetings with, a degree of wit and charm that it's going to be very difficult to follow. So thank you very much for your service. I really have appreciated it.
Well, thank you, Michael. All right, with that, may I also note that at the beginning of the pandemic, it was Mr. Barnes who ushered us into our new Zoom process with aplomb. It's a matter of teamwork, and this commission has, I think, repeatedly shown teamwork, worked well together, and when there are disagreements, been professional. So it is, that I guess is the temptation and the reason why some of us keep coming back for another year. So with that, we will adjourn this meeting at 8:35 p.m. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. And welcome, Commissioner Harris.